What's up, my brothers? Special teams, special plays, special players. Welcome into another episode of the 504 Core Podcast. We got a special guest this time. Old friend of mine, guy who I used to intern with at WDSU. Now he's a big superstar, the Philadelphia Inquirer. He's sports editor, also draft specialist. Joining us, Mr. Devin Jackson. How you doing today, Devin?
I'm doing great. You talk about superstar. That's actually you, sir. Aren't you up for Sportscaster of the Year in Colorado?
We try to keep quiet, about those kind of things. We focus on y'all, not me. Anywho, let's talk about the NFL draft, right? It's coming up here in, I believe, 3 weeks, 2 weeks?
2 weeks from today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
2 weeks
two
from today.
weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks from today. New Orleans Saints have the 14th pick. I've been focusing a lot on the Broncos at the 12th pick. But Devin, in your opinion, do you go cornerback with the kid from Iowa, Cooper, or
Yeah,
do
Cooper
you
DeJean.
go? Yeah, do you go tight end? Do you go left tackle? Because after first round, left tackle's terrible. What route do you take if you're the Saints?
Yeah, I mean, based on what they've done in at least recent years, is you build in the trenches. So to me, I think the way that I will rank it right now is I would go offensive tackle as kind of the top priority or top need. I would look at edge rusher just because Cam Jordan is pretty much on his last legs for the Saints. You haven't got much out of Peyton Turner. And obviously you invested in Brian Bresee last year to upgrade the defensive line or interior defensive line. And then after that, I'd look at corner. But to me, corner is only a realistic and viable option if you're trading Marshawn Lattimore on draft day, or you're trading him leading up to the draft, just because he's still on the roster. And to me, it doesn't make sense to draft a corner unless you plan on trading him immediately. So I think that's kind of the way that I view it at the very least. The tackle class is extraordinary this year. So many talented and interesting players that could be available. Olu Fashanu from Penn State could be there at 14. You got J.C. Latham from Alabama who could play guard or tackle. And depending on what happens with Ryan Ramczyk, I think is kind of the big question mark if he's going to be able to come back and play at a high level. But those two guys I would say kind of stand out. I mean, you could go the guard/tackle route with Troy Fatanu from Washington. So there's a lot of good options, I would say, especially at 14. I just think in this DB class, there's maybe one or two guys that you would take at 14 and stay as is. To me, though, those two guys would be Terran Arnold and Cooper DeJean from Iowa. So if you feel like you're going to move on from Marshawn Lattimore, I would say you go right ahead and take a DB. But the tackle class is robust. A lot of teams are going to be moving around to try and get one of those guys, and the Saints should be in that discussion. But sneaky need is edge rusher. I could see them liking a guy like Jared Verse. He fits kind of the type of profile and type of defensive end that they want, at least in New Orleans. So it really just depends on who's available, what the value is, and where exactly they see it playing on going. But to me, I feel like it's tackle or edge rusher at this point.
With Jared Verse being the edge rusher,
Yes.
what would you trade up for Jared Verse?
No.
I think he's legit.
Um, he's definitely legit. I don't know if I would trade up much for him because I think he's going to be there at 14 more likely than not. Just because I think Dallas Turner is probably going to be off the board first as an edge rusher from Alabama. Atlanta has been a popular destination for him, and it makes a lot of sense for the scheme that they're going to be bringing to Atlanta and the upside that he brings. And Atlanta is kind of trying to push all their chips in. Obviously, they have Kirk Cousins and they got Rondell Moore in the offseason. They have Drake London, Kyle Pitts offensively, but defensively they still need some pieces, and he makes a lot of sense for them. So I think Jared Verse is going to be there if you stay at 14. But I would be worried if the Broncos end up not getting a quarterback. Do they go edge rusher? And which edge rusher could they take? I don't think Verse is really a fit for them. I think they're more looking for an outside linebacker type, but as a true defensive end, I think Jared Verse is there at 14, so you don't need to trade up for him.
Mike, you got any questions real quick before I just
Well, I was gonna say, like, you kind of have to go offensive line. I mean, look at where the offensive line is right now. Eric McCoy is pretty much your only sure thing. I mean, Ryan Ramczyk, you don't even know if he's even going to play this year from all the comments you've heard. So, and then Ruiz is a below average starter in the NFL. Or you could say average to be generous, but your whole left side of the line's wide open. I mean, you got Trevor Penning, who's an unsure thing coming off injuries, and Fashanu would be the dream scenario. I mean, this class is loaded with tackles and receivers. So luckily, that's good for the Saints. So I would be looking at offensive line, maybe even trading back, trying to acquire more picks, and then see what they do. But you could always use more pass rushers, as Devin said. Like, you can never have enough of those guys. So Jared Verse is an athletic guy. I know the Saints look at athletic scores. He's up there. So I don't know, DB. I think if Lattimore is traded, you kind of just move Alontae Taylor to the outside because he did struggle from the slot last year. So, it kind of depends on what you do with Lattimore with that. But I don't think there's really a wrong pick. The players will get a player, or the Saints will get a really good player at 14 if you got 4 or 5 quarterbacks coming off the board between pick 14. So we'll see what happens. What were you gonna say, Corey?
No, I just want to talk about quarterbacks now because I know you only have
Road row. Do we lose him?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. With a brown grade.
Wait, what were you saying? This dude. What were you saying? You cut out.
They only have I know you only have 3 quarterbacks with a first round grade. Just talk about your thought processes on JJ McCarthy because obviously he is skyrocketing on the boards right now. Most projections I've seen in the last 24 or 48 hours have had McCarthy actually going to the Patriots and Drake May falling.
Yeah, it's definitely smoke season right now, I would say. We're 2 weeks out from the draft. A lot of varying opinions, a lot of projections at this point. I mean, we've been doing this for like 6-7 months now, but with McCarthy, he is a big intangibles guy. Like, he is the quarterback of this class that everyone points to his intangibles, his ability to win at Michigan, what he's able to do, outside of the pocket and keep Michigan's offense on schedule. He's so polarizing because no one really knows how high he's going to go. We know he's going to be going in the first round, but it could be a situation. I mean, to me, like, every year we kind of have that one guy that no one is quite sure knows where or who is going to select him. I think back to Justin Fields a couple years ago. Everyone figured like, oh, he's QB2. He's going to be off the board in the first 3 picks. He doesn't end up going to, I think, 11 to the Bears in that particular draft. Last year with Will Levis, everyone was talking about him going in the top 3, maybe a top 4.
Yeah.
He didn't end up going to the second round, so I think we're kind of at this point where that 4th quarterback, when does he come off the board? And to me, I think I know there's a lot of smoke right now in terms of like he's going to go before Drake May and, maybe he goes before Jane Daniels, but I think he's still the 4th quarterback off the board when it's all said and done. And, to me, I don't blame a team for taking that swing on him. I'm looking at the Broncos and the Vikings because it feels like those are the 2 teams that are heavily interested in him, but so are the Giants. So I think when you look at those 3 teams, they absolutely need to get a quarterback for the future. They just don't have it right now. Daniel Jones, you look at him, he's probably not going to make it to the next contract for the Giants. He may be even cut before then. And then obviously the Broncos not really having much on the roster right now, quarterback, and the Vikings, they signed Sam Darnold to a 1-year, $10 million deal. So to me, McCarthy is a guy that teams are willing to bet on his traits, his intangibles, what he brings to the table, and how he keeps offenses on schedule. What his ceiling is, I'm not quite sure yet, just because his sample size compared to the other three quarterbacks projected to go ahead of him are much larger. But it's clear that the NFL really likes him. But for me, he's a day two guy that classic day two guy that's going in the first round because the NFL loves selecting quarterbacks in the first round.
You know who I'd be mad if the Broncos took?
Bo Nix.
Yep. Bo Nix. Bo, I watched you be average Knicks. Bo, I look good because I'm throwing against with wide open wide receivers and screen passes, and Oregon takes it 60 yards against terrible defenses. I've watched Bo Nix so much. I am not a fan. Anyways, all right, let's continue this discussion, Devin. With the NFL draft, what do you think? Who do you think that nobody's talking about right now that could go top 5, top 10, and that's going to be a surprise? And also, what team do you feel like could make a big trade to go up and get a quarterback or a guy in the top 5, top 10, besides the Broncos and the Vikings, because that's been talked about?
Yeah, when I look at a guy that could go top 10 that no one is really talking about, I would say Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle from Texas. He has a good chance to be one of the first defenders off the board. And a lot of people are expecting him to go in the teens or early 20s, but the NFL seems to have really loved him. Like, coming into the year, it was Johnny Newton or Jerzon Newton from Illinois that garnered a lot of the interior defensive line praise. But really, since January, Byron Murphy has really taken off. I think he was like
He's
somewhere
from
like
Louisiana, right?
is he?
No. Hold on. I'm
But
sorry.
as you figure that out, he's a guy that was like mostly seen as like a second or third round pick during the season. But really, since the season ended and his pre-draft process has started, he's rocketed up boards. And could see a team like the Chicago Bears, who need some more juice on their defensive line, interior defensive line in particular, could take a swing on him inside the top 10. So Murphy will be my pick is in terms of a guy that could go in the top 10 that we aren't really talking about too much. I would say him and then Terrion Arnold as well from Alabama, just because a team could really like what he brings to the table, how he views it, how he's viewed as an inside-out defensive back prospect, and what he's able to do at the catch point and tackling in space. So I would say those two guys are guys that I'd be looking at that could go in top 10 that aren't getting much buzz. Then a team trading up into the top 5 to get a quarterback, I would say the Raiders. You look at what they're at right now in terms of, they moved on from Jimmy Garoppolo. They have not Jarrett Stidham, but they have Gardner Minshew, and everywhere he's been kind of a placeholder starter. So to me, I think they're going to be interested in taking a big swing at quarterback, especially if maybe a team like the Vikings doesn't get into the top 5, or a team like the Broncos doesn't get in the top 5. I would be looking at that 4th pick specifically for the Raiders, because I just can't see the Chargers trading in division to the Raiders to get a quarterback. But I would look at that number 4 pick, with the Cardinals, and I think the Raiders would be interested in taking a quarterback. Maybe if they don't take one on day 1, it would make a lot of sense for them to take either Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. on day 2 if they don't get a quarterback in the first round.
Bo Nix, baby.
Who's a deep sleeper for this draft for trading up for a quarterback? And they won't do it, but Dallas.
Cowboys.
Yeah, I was going to say Dallas.
Dak Prescott.
They might, though. They might take a guy like Michael Pratt.
Yeah.
They could.
Is Pratt moving up on boards?
Not anymore, unfortunately. He's kind of like locked into like probably round 3, I would say.
Yeah.
Just because he didn't finish the season, or really he didn't have quite the season they thought he was going to have that he did in 2022. He dealt with some injuries, and he didn't look, I would say, as sharp as you would expect him to look in the pre-draft process, especially in the throwing session at the combine.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's just kind of like that classic, like between like 70 and 100. Like you take him there and as a developmental guy, but he can make a lot of sense for teams like the Cowboys. Other teams that may not necessarily have quarterback needs right now, but will in a year or two.
Sounds good. You want to transition over to the NBA, Mike?
Well, I was going to ask Devin first before we do that. How many QBs do you have going in the first round?
Just three. Well, no, I take that back. I would say four is locked in for sure. There might be a fifth, and I think it just depends on what teams are able to get a quarterback, that fourth quarterback, I would say, or even a third quarterback. I mean, the Vikings could trade up to three if they wanted to. The Patriots have a quarterback need, but they also got a lot of other needs. They're not ready to compete right now, and they need a left tackle too. So I think four for sure. I feel pretty confident about. If there's a fifth, I don't know where it would come from, but I feel like Bo Nix would be that fifth guy at some point later in round one. Um, but
You
yeah,
think
I
Nick,
feel like four.
you think Nick's over Penix?
Yeah, because of Penix's
Medical.
injury history,
Yeah.
multiple knee injuries. I think he had a shoulder injury as well. Um, his injury history, I think, scared teams, and then, um, like he was such a good college quarterback, but I'm not sure that he's going to be able to hit the windows like he did consistently, like he consistently did in college, and um, I just think his durability is kind of the hanging question in general in terms of how long he's going to last in the NFL. So I would say that that's kind of the prevailing thought that I've gathered at the very least is that Knicks would go over Penix because of the injury history of Penix.
How would you rank your top three receivers?
Yeah, so for me, it's Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors,
Ooh.
and
Ooh.
I have I have Rome
Disagree.
over. Yeah, I have Rome over Neighbors, just because I feel like Rome is going to be just so hard to stop at the NFL level. Not that Neighbors won't, but his size, his ability to make those contested tough catches, and his ability to find ways to get open. I mean, he's drawn comparisons to Jamar Chase in terms of his size and skill set and what he's able to do. And he has legit long speed. I think Neighbors is going to is a really creative route runner, one of the best yards after catch guys at least in the NFL draft this particular year. But I feel like Odunze is going to be less scheme dependent than Neighbors. I feel like Neighbors is he can run routes from everywhere, but you have to have a really good game plan and finding ways to get him the ball versus a guy like Odunze where you can throw him the ball at any point, anywhere on the field, and he's probably going to come down with it.
I'll make you a bet. Malik Neighbors is the best receiver in that draft.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree. I could absolutely see it. I think he has the special quality that not many receivers in this class does in terms of he can score from anywhere on the field, from any position. So I wouldn't be surprised if he turns out to be the best. I think it just more comes down to preference and what I like in receivers. And I like what Odunze brings more in terms of size and down the field than the Neighbors. But I really like Neighbors. They're like stacked right behind each other in the way I see it, and there's a high possibility those three guys go three in a row in the NFL draft.
All right, now let's talk about the NBA draft. NBA, so general. Got block out the Suns. No Suns are coming for that seed for the 6 seed. The Pels need to stay in the 6. Real quick, Devin, I know your time's valuable. I got to go on a little Pels rant. The New Orleans Pelicans are doing exactly what I expected them to do this season. The Pelicans have had 5 more wins than last year. That is called progress. The Pelicans have kept Zion healthy. He potentially could play 70 games. Zion, at the end of this season, is now starting to play his best basketball. We've seen him with a mid range jumper. Hopefully, you get Brandon Ingram back. But the Pelicans do need to win potentially these next 3 games, or at least go 2-1 to stay out of the playing game. It's going to be very important for the New Orleans Pelicans to stay out of the playing game and have a chance to play against. Hopefully, I want them to play against the Timberwolves because they played the Wolves very well this season compared to the Thunder. But Dev, I know you watch a good bit of Pels. I want your take on this team and this roster.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been an up and down season in terms of like their highs are really high, but the lows have been very frustrating to watch, I would say. You see a team that I mean, and even last year, you think about last year, they were the number one seed at one point.
Yeah.
And this season has been more of a figuring out themselves, I would say, like figuring out how to close games, figuring out what lineups work, figuring out how to get everyone touches and getting Trey Murphy going and getting Zion going. CJ McCollum has been coming on as of late. So, it's kind of been kind of that season where you're figuring out how good you can be. And everyone kind of recognizes that the Pelicans are a legitimate threat in the West. Are they a threat to win the West? I don't think they're quite there yet. But they're at least a threat to make it to the second round and really push some of the top teams. Because they've beaten almost all the top teams this year in
Yeah.
the West when you think about it. And they probably should have beat the Thunder multiple times this year. We know they blew one of those games. They almost came back in the most recent matchup and won, but just couldn't finish it off. Um, so I think it's really going to come down to them in the playoffs at the very least is finding consistency in not only their stars but their bench production because they have one of the deepest benches in the NBA and what they're able to deploy and bring out. Uh, but we haven't seen them healthy enough, I would say. Like Brent Ingram obviously going down a couple weeks ago has been kind of tough, but then you start to see what CJ can bring, what Trey Murphy can bring offensively. Kind of the contributions of Jonas Valanciunas is coming back into the mix now after he went for a while, kind of not playing as much. So I think they're pushing the right buttons at the right time. But reinserting Brandon Ingram into the lineup, I think is going to be the biggest challenge in terms of like keeping that momentum and not relying on him just to create offense, but instead they're able to really let Zion be point Zion and Brandon Ingram to kind of play off of that. I think that's when they're at their best and can allow them to maybe make a deep playoff run.
I agree. I actually agree on all those statements. And dude, to me, it's also when Trey Murphy's hitting threes, his team's the most dangerous. When he's scoring 31 points like he did in Portland, when he's stretching the floor and getting active, it gives you so much versatility, especially when him and Herb are on the floor. Mike, you got questions for Devin?
Yeah. What's considered a win to you for the Pelicans this season? Like, is it a first round, like getting past the first round? Is it like what would you consider like progress for this team in your eyes?
I would say definitely getting to the second round and avoiding the play in, I would say are the two things that would make this season a success just because we've seen them in a play in. They've won one play in, they've lost one play in. They pushed the Suns obviously to 6 games a couple years ago. And they probably should have made the playoffs last year before they let it slip away. Um, so I think getting past the first round would be huge in terms of their development just because they clearly have the team, the core to make it happen. But they have to find ways to close games, especially at home, because it's not even like, and they're like the opposite of what you would expect the team to be, like a youngish team with a young core. you expect them to be explosive at home and like struggle on the road. They've flip flopped this year where they're more dangerous on the road than they are playing at home. So I think being able to win the games that they're supposed to win, defend their home court, in addition to being able to like steal a game, the first two games because they're likely going to start on the road in the playoffs if they do get directly into the playoffs without the play-in. So I think being able to defend home court in the playoffs and really being able to show that they are a legitimate team to make a threatening playoff run. I think, it they kind of I will say they kind of remind me of like those early year Thunder teams where they can really bring that energy, but they have to play with that energy off the jump. And I think at home they've really struggled and getting started, getting that momentum, and being able to do that. But they, at least construction wise,
Yeah.
they feel like kind of that Thunder team where what is their ceiling? How far could they go? And every year is kind of a building block, and they need to be able to get past the first round to take that next step.
Deb, they have 5 more wins on the road than at home this season. I don't think any other NBA team is relatively close to that. They're a really good road team.
Yeah, they had like the third best NBA or record in the NBA on the road behind like the Celtics and somebody else. So they are like, they play extremely well in a place where they typically struggle from over the last couple years. It's been the opposite where they will play well at home but struggle on the road. But this year they've really found ways to grind out road wins, and it's going to pay off come playoff time.
If the Pelicans win tonight, they will have the most wins on the road in NBA.
That's crazy.
Tied with the Celtics. Because the Celtics have 27, the Pelicans have 26. The Pels are 26-14 on the road and 21-18 at home.
What are your thoughts about the trio, or just like the fit, just as a whole, of CJ, Brandon Ingram, and Zion?
It's kind of mixed for me. Like, there just isn't enough balance, I feel like, in big games in terms of like who's taking the shots. And to me, Brandon Ingram in those big games just doesn't always come out ready to score.
Yes.
And that's kind of been the biggest thing that I've noticed is that Zion, he will press, CJ will press in terms of like kind of forcing shots or trying to get the team going. But I know Brandon Ingram's kind of taken on more on a facilitator role and getting other guys involved, but he typically has mismatches, when he's playing in these games. And I just feel like there's not enough emphasis on from him trying to score and being aggressive, but also kind of a game planning perspective in like getting those guys going early, getting them early, easy shots early. And to me, like right off the bat, they should be doing Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson pick and rolls to kind of get them in the flow of the game. So to me, I think CJ serves a purpose, and to me, I think he's going to be at his best, especially in playoff time, if you leave him in a little bit longer after the starters start to sit down and let him get a run with that second unit, because I think that's when he can really take over the kind of the scoring load, and him and Trey Murphy can play off each other really well, especially like at the beginning of the second quarter. But I feel like with them, like you either get a really aggressive Zion and like a passive Brandon Ingram, or you're getting a aggressive Brandon Ingram and kind of like Zion taking a back seat. Like to me, like they have to be attacking like consistently, like when they're in the game together, and really taking advantage of their offensive skill sets, because they're going to have the shooters to surround them with. You have Trey Murphy. Herb Jones is a much improved 3-point shooter. You can bring guys off the bench as well. Dyson Daniels is a great defender and high IQ guy. So it's like you can do a lot of different things with their lineup, but it starts with being aggressive from the tip, and I think Brandon Ingram just needs to press more than letting the game come to him, just because uh, they can't afford those slow starts that they've been having in the regular season.
Gail Benson calls you 2 months from now, promote you to GM. What are you doing with this team? Are you going in for a superstar? Are you letting it play out another year? What are you doing?
It's a tough question, just because it kind of depends on how the season ends. Um,
Let's say
and
they
even
get past the first round and they go the second round, they win 2 games, so they lose in 6. What are you thinking?
I'm kind of seeing what CJ McCollum's worth is right now on the trade market. Um, just because I feel like he's kind of served his purpose in with the Pelicans, in terms of like he's brought leadership there. He's brought discipline to the team and showed them what they can be. But he has become I mean, he's played much better defensively recently, but he's generally a liability defensively when he's on the court, which is why they sometimes mask it by playing Dyson Daniels and Herb Jones both at the same time when he's on the court. I would see what the offers are for Ingram and McCollum, in terms of like what teams would be willing to send to them, just because you have, I mean, you're assuming that Ingram comes back and plays the full playoffs. I mean, this is really the first playoff run where everyone is healthy, and everyone's actually playing. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to be like, all right, this one and done, but something has to be tinkered with, even just slightly. Um, and if you have a chance to get like an athletic big who can score,
Was
or
Naj Reed be a guy you would look at?
I would say yes, but I wouldn't trade too much to get him, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Like, I think he's kind of a low risk, high reward kind of guy. Like, you bring him in and kind of just see what happens. But I would not be willing to part with Brandon Ingram off of that. Like, if you're parting with Brandon Ingram, you better be getting uh, either legitimate two-way players, or a really high end type of player. Like, to me, like, I would like to see like a like Laurie Markkinen Zion pairing.
Dude, I've
Like
been for Lori for a year and a half. That's
I
my
always like to see that pairing, like to be able to have like a sh- you know like a big that can stretch the floor, and with Zion, you just need more space for Zion to operate, generally speaking. Um, but you also need guys that can go and get their own buckets, and I think Jonas provides that, and he does a really nice job. But defensively, especially against Jokic, against Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, like he does the best he can, but you need more, and you need like the athletes at that size. And I know they tried to go that route with Jackson Hayes, it just never really worked out. But look, I mean, Larry Nance and Jonas are great, serviceable players, but I think they're at the point now where you got to start pairing Zion with, uh, scorers and guys that can really defend on both ends of the floor at a high level, and be able to switch everything, because they're at a point now where the NBA is so specialized and so spread out that everyone has to be able to play defense, or you're just going to be getting attacked. you know so I think that's kind of what they're missing right now, in terms of uh not necessarily rim protection, but in terms of like being able to stay in front of these guys and make life difficult. I just don't think Nance and Valanciunas has a foot speed to do that over a 7-game series.
and I also don't think Larry Nance is the answer a lot of like the times. And I feel like Willie Green, I feel like sometimes too, Devin, like that playoff series last year against Oklahoma series, not the series, the playing game against the Thunder. Jonas was like 11 for 12 from the field in the third quarter, and we don't see him for like a quarter in 2 minutes. We don't see him for like 14 straight minutes. And it's like, why? you lose that game, you had a 10-point lead and you take him out. There's a lot of times that frustrate me with Jonas just because he has a mismatch. Let's use it and abuse it, right? I get he has defensive liabilities. DeAndre Ayton kills him every time. DeAndre Ayton's a horrible matchup for Jonas. Obviously, Jokic and even Cat are going to dominate him. But there's certain teams that you really need Jonas Valanciunas for.
Yeah, he's still going to be valuable. I think even having him at some point come off the bench and kind of play that role, especially in like the second like to me, like if you're gonna keep CJ and Jonas, you got to start looking for replacements for them, in terms of like guys that are gonna be able to provide that foot speed defensively, but also bring on the offensive side of the court as well. To me, they're both guys that can beat up on kind of the second unit, especially like going past this year. And like Valanciunas is very, like you said, he very like game to game dependent on who he's playing, but he's still valuable and he still can go and give you 15, 20 points when you need it.
Like if you play the Thunder, you need to use him against Chet.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I agree, but also what comes with that is like he gets in foul trouble potentially.
Yeah.
And then you got to bring in Nance, and he kind of has to play a little less aggressive because you don't want multiple bigs in foul trouble. And then they end up playing a small ball game. So it's tough. Those types of matchups are tough just because you want Jonas to be able to do what he does, but there's also that chance he gets into foul trouble. And then you have to start rotating guys. You don't want Zion getting in foul trouble because then that makes you suffer offensively. So it's definitely a tough juggle and adjustment, but like you said, when Jonas is going, you gotta just let him ride it. You can't you
Ride
can't you can't take him out when he's thriving,
Because
and you have to be able to. You also have to be able to understand like this is not a Larry Nance game. I think sometimes Willie kind of loses sight of that because Nance maybe provides you a little bit better defensively, but in terms of what Valanciunas brings, when he's scoring and unstoppable offensively, I mean that opens up the entire Pelicans offense.
100%.
One thing me and Corey have been debating back and forth. I don't know if Corey still has a stance on this, but the Pelicans picked this year with the Lakers. Let's say the Lakers flop in the play-in and end up with the 14th pick. Do you keep it or do you defer it to next year?
It's a tough one. I kind of lean deferring it to next year just because I don't think the Lakers are in position to be a contender anytime soon. It's another year that LeBron James is older.
Yeah.
Look, Anthony Davis, I mean, you can bet on him missing some form of
Dude, he's
games
played
next year.
75 games this year. No lie.
I mean, it's been impressive for sure.
They're still 9 seed.
But their roster construction, the way that they're set up right now, they are just not ready to contend seriously for a title. I mean, you hate to kind of like push it down the road and hope that they do worse next year, but I mean, I don't see it getting better for the Lakers. So that's why I would say I would defer it to next year.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is like both these guys have played a lot of the year, LeBron and Davis, and they're the 9th seed right now, 10th seed, whatever. So that's what them playing both of them playing the whole season, and that's what they're looking like now. LeBron's gonna be older, AD's gonna be another year older. They're always getting hurt in the future. This draft sucks. And then there's tax implications. Like, does Gale want to pay the tax as well? So I think they're going to kick it down. There was a report yesterday saying that they're leaning towards deferring it to next year. So I think it's pretty interesting. But there's the threat of the Lakers trying to use that pick for a trade. But I don't really see anyone that could really push them over the top. What do you got, Corey?
There's also like my whole point is you talked about LeBron getting older and everybody getting older. There's a chance that they say F it and go all in next year because it's LeBron's last year, right? They go all in, and then you're sitting there with the 25th pick, instead of the 13th or 14th pick. That's my only thought process of it is like, do I think the Lakers will be good next year? No. But can they? You know, it's still LeBron and AD, and then you go and get a Murray or somebody. You just go all in, trade Reeves, you trade all whatever assets you have.
But they don't have any assets. Like they got Reeves as the only asset, and then that pick, which GMs are viewing this draft is not that good. So I don't understand what
still,
guy they could really go after.
It wouldn't surprise me. Like they trade D'Lo too, or something like that.
D'Lo's got a player option, so and he's gonna probably opt out and get more money. So it's like the Lakers are kind of screwed, honestly.
I don't think he's gonna get more money.
I think he will. He's making 17 next year. Like
yeah,
guys overpay.
You got the new bargaining deal. Anyways, we're getting off topic. I'm just like the Lakers go all in, and next year you say they get a top 6 seed. You're sitting there with the 23rd, 24th, 25th pick in a draft instead of 13.
True, but I mean, you look at the way the Pelicans are constructed right now. I mean, even if they have the 12-13 pick, who are they going to take that's going to be an immediate difference maker? You know, just because like
Nova from the University of Colorado Boulder, a 6'9" German with handles, shoots 40% from 3, and plays solid defense.
Is he going to get on the court though? I mean, is he going to get on the court over like a Najee Marshall, Dyson Daniels?
Over Najee Marshall.
Well, Najee Marshall's a free agent, so he's probably gone. Marshall's probably going to get paid.
Dude,
I don't know by who,
Marshall
but by somebody.
Frustrates the crap out of me. My man loves dribbling the basketball. That's his favorite thing. Bro dribbles out the shot clock.
No, but I understand your point. In you know, maybe you miss out on it, but you have a really good core right now, you know, and even if you add a rookie to the mix, I mean, Jordan Hawkins is barely seeing the court, and he's really good, like a really good scorer. Obviously, defensive wise, not as much, but think about how long it took Dyson Daniels to get on the court consistently. You know, how long it took Jordan Hawkins to get on the court really this year. Even if they do keep that pick, you know, Trey Murphy took a while to get going. I mean, it's a learning curve, you know, and everyone kind of is different levels of where they're going to play and just where the Pelicans are right now. You know, they're going to lose a few guys, but the core is still there, and you know, this potential rookie is going to be towards the end of the bench, at least in the first half of the season, at the very least. So
that's fine.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say if it's valuable to keep the pick this year, but I mean, I see the reasoning both ways. But to me, I think you defer at this point, and take your chances that okay, the Lakers are going to go all in. They still won't have a bench. So I think that's going to be the big point is like, okay, you have another high-end starter. Well, we've seen this movie before. I mean, the Clippers are struggling right now, and they have 3 stars, you know? So
Westbrook too. They went all in on Westbrook.
So it's no guarantee that if you get this 3rd star in a trade that it's going to work out and you're going to win a championship because you still have to compete with the Nuggets. The Timberwolves are not going anywhere. Pelicans obviously aren't going anywhere. The Thunder are just only starting to see their potential. So
Memphis going to get dragged back.
At best, you're still maybe a 5th, 6th seed, and that's not going to be enough, you know, to move you into championship contender land.
Well, Devin, I know you gotta get ready to go. Busy man working for the Philadelphia Inquirer, you know, sports editor. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining us, dude.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I appreciate your insight and some really good stuff. And I'll let Mike do all the plugs and everything.
Well, one thing I want to ask Devin, what's the mood with the 76ers in Philly right now with Embiid? Like, are they, you know?
I would say modest optimism. Like, they are clearly better with him on the court. Is it enough to get past the Celtics, you know, the Bucks, the leads of the East? I mean, with Giannis kind of his status in question, maybe that gives Sixers a little bit more hope. But the Celtics are still the Celtics, and they have not been able to beat them. In the playoffs, regular season. I mean, that is their Achilles heel. I know they had James Harden last year, but outside of Maxey and Embiid, it's still, and like Kelly Oubre is having a really good year, but like Tobias Harris is still a question mark. Um, they're getting some good contributions off the bench, but I think I'll say just modest optimism because you're glad, or Sixers fans are glad that Embiid is back, but will that parlay into a neat playoff run? Probably not. So,
Yeah. Anything else, Corey?
Nope.
All right. Well, that wraps it up. Episode 52. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, appreciate you coming in, Devin. Appreciate the insight. And Corey's going to go block out the sun. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.